The metal corridors of Research Station Kepler-7 hummed with the constant vibration of life support systems. Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cool wall as she walked toward the xenobiology lab, her mind racing with the implications of what they'd discovered 3 weeks ago on the forest moon of Tertius Prime. The Valkyrie nest had been beautiful in its alien architecture, crystalline structures that sang in harmonious frequencies when the wind passed through them. The insectoid species had built their cities like living symphonies, each building resonating with the others to create music that could be heard across continents. Sarah had spent months studying their culture, learning their language of clicks and harmonics, understanding their peaceful way of life, until the hegemony found them. Sarah's stomach clenched as she remembered the orbital bombardment. The Terran hegemony had declared the Valkyrie system a strategic resource zone. The crystalline formations contained rare minerals essential for faster-than-light travel. The Valkyrie's protests had been ignored. Their peaceful nature had been seen as weakness. The door to the lab slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, 5 containment pods hummed quietly in the sterile white room. Sarah approached them slowly, her heart aching at what she saw within. 5 Valkyrie younglings, each no bigger than a human child, floated in nutrient fluid. Their chitinous exoskeletons were still soft and translucent, showing the delicate organs beneath. Their large, compound eyes tracked movement, even in their sedated state. "They're responding well to the treatment," came a voice behind her. Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's chief medical officer, entered carrying a data pad. His weathered face showed the strain of the past weeks. "The radiation burns are healing, and their neural activity is stable." Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. These 5 were all that remained of a species that had numbered in the billions just a month ago. She had saved them from the burning nest, carrying them through collapsing crystal corridors as plasma fire rained from the sky. The memory of their mother's final song, a mournful harmony that had guided Sarah to the nursery, still echoed in her mind. "The hegemony wants them transferred to the capital for study," Webb continued, his voice carefully neutral. "Study." Sarah's voice was bitter. "They mean experimentation. They want to understand Valkyrie biology so they can better exploit any other colonies they might find." Webb set down his pad and moved to stand beside her. "Sarah, you know I agree with you, but we're just a research station. We don't have the authority to what? To refuse to hand over children to be dissected?" Sarah's eyes blazed with fury. "Marcus, look at them. Look at their eyes. They're sapient beings. They have hopes, dreams, fears. They're not specimens." Through the transparent aluminum of the nearest pod, one of the younglings pressed a delicate hand against the barrier. Its compound eyes seemed to focus directly on Sarah, and she heard a soft, harmonic whistle, the Valkyrie equivalent of a child calling for its mother. "They trust me," Sarah whispered. "I'm the only human who speaks their language. I'm the only connection they have to their lost world." Webb was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully measured. "The transport arrives in 6 hours. Admiral Crenshaw himself is coming to oversee the transfer." Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. Admiral Crenshaw was known throughout the hegemony for his ruthless efficiency. He had been one of the architects of the pacification of 12 non-human worlds. If he was coming personally, it meant the hegemony considered these 5 younglings extremely valuable, or extremely dangerous. "Marcus," Sarah said slowly, "what if there was another way?" The older man looked at her sharply. "Sarah, whatever you're thinking, the mining freighter Perseverance is docked at Bay 7. Captain Rodriguez owes me a favor from when I helped treat her crew's radiation poisoning last year." Sarah turned to face Webb fully. "The Outer Rim territories don't recognize hegemony authority. There are worlds out there where these children could grow up free. That's treason," Webb said quietly. "If they catch you, it won't just be imprisonment. It'll be execution." Sarah looked back at the pods. The younglings were becoming more active, their harmonics growing stronger. They were healing, growing stronger. Soon they would be old enough to understand what had happened to their people. What would she tell them then? That she had stood by and allowed their species' legacy to be reduced to laboratory samples? "I've been thinking about this for weeks," she said. "I have the access codes for the medical bay. I know the guard rotations. The Perseverance leaves in 4 hours, 2 hours before Crenshaw arrives. The security footage can be altered. You know the systems better than anyone." Sarah turned to look at her old mentor. "Marcus, please. These children are the last hope for an entire civilization. We can't let the hegemony turn them into weapons or breeding stock." Webb was silent for a long time, staring at the pods. Finally, he sighed. "Captain Rodriguez won't do it for free, and she'll need guarantees that the hegemony won't come after her." Sarah felt a surge of hope. "I have my research data on the Valkyrie neural patterns. It's worth a fortune to the right buyers, and there are people in the Outer Rim who would pay well to spite the hegemony." "This is insane," Webb muttered, but he was already moving to his workstation. "We'll need portable life support units for the younglings, and you'll need to alter your biosignature in the ship's passenger manifest." As Webb began working, Sarah approached the pods again. The younglings had arranged themselves in a pattern, their harmonics synchronizing into a complex melody. She recognized it from her cultural studies, a song of hope traditionally sung by young Valkyrie when they were afraid. "I promise," she whispered to them in their own language, her words creating subtle clicks and harmonics. "I won't let them hurt you. I'll find you a safe place to grow up, to remember your people." The largest of the younglings pressed both hands against the pod wall. Its compound eyes seemed to shimmer with understanding. It began to sing softly, a simple melody that Sarah recognized as a lullaby she had heard Valkyrie mothers sing to their children. The trust in that small voice broke something inside Sarah's heart and rebuilt it stronger. She would save them. She would give them the chance to live, to grow, to honor the memory of their lost world. Whatever the cost to herself, these 5 young hunters would survive. Behind her, Webb was already working on the portable life support systems. In 4 hours, they would either be free or dead. But for the first time since the bombardment, Sarah felt hope burning bright in her chest. The youngling's lullaby filled the lab, a song of loss transformed into a promise of tomorrow. The emergency lighting cast red shadows down the maintenance corridor as Sarah pushed the anti-grav cart containing 5 life support units. Each youngling floated peacefully in their portable pod, their soft harmonics barely audible above the hum of the life support systems. Webb walked beside her, his hands steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. "Security patrol passes Bay 7 in 12 minutes, Webb whispered, checking his chronometer. "Rodriguez's crew should be finishing their pre-flight checks now." Sarah nodded, her heart pounding so hard she was sure it could be heard throughout the station. They had spent the last 3 hours preparing, altering security footage, creating false maintenance records, and most importantly, stabilizing the younglings for transport. The portable life support units were designed for short-term medical emergencies, not interstellar travel. They would only last 48 hours at most. "What if Rodriguez has changed her mind?" Sarah asked as they approached the junction that led to the docking bay. "She won't," Webb replied with more confidence than he felt. "Carmen Rodriguez has been fighting the hegemony's expansion policies for years. When she found out what happened to the Valkyrie, she was ready to help before you even finished asking." They paused at the corner, listening for footsteps. The station was on gamma shift. Minimal crew, maximum opportunity. Webb pulled up the security feed on his portable unit, scanning for guards. "Clear," he whispered. They moved quickly down the final corridor. Bay 7 stretched before them, a vast chamber filled with the bulk of the mining freighter Perseverance. The ship was old but well-maintained, her hull scarred from decades of working in asteroid fields and hostile environments. To Sarah, she looked like salvation. Captain Carmen Rodriguez was waiting by the cargo ramp, her weathered face grim. She was a small woman with steel-gray hair and hands that spoke of years working with heavy machinery. Her reputation among the independent traders was legendary, fair in business, fierce in friendship, and absolutely ruthless toward anyone who threatened her crew. "Dr. Chen," she said quietly as they approached, "are these the children?" Sarah nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Rodriguez moved to the cart, studying the 5 younglings with gentle eyes. One of them, the largest, whom Sarah had begun thinking of as Echo, turned toward the new voice and sang a soft, questioning note. "Beautiful," Rodriguez murmured. "I've never seen anything like them." She looked up at Sarah. "My daughter was about their age when the hegemony took her father. I know what it's like to lose everything to their greater good." "Captain," Webb interrupted urgently, "we have a problem. I'm reading 3 ships dropping out of hyperspace. Admiral Crenshaw is arriving early." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. They were still 40 minutes from departure. There was no way they could launch without being detected. "How early?" Rodriguez demanded. 20 minutes, maybe less." Rodriguez cursed colorfully in 3 languages. "My ship isn't ready for a combat jump. We need at least 30 minutes to charge the hyperdrive." "Then we hide," Sarah said suddenly. "This is a mining freighter, right? You have cargo holds, shielding for asteroid work." "The sensor baffles," Rodriguez said, understanding immediately. "They're designed to hide the ship from asteroid monitoring systems. But if they do a full military scan—" "They won't," Webb said with sudden insight. "Crenshaw's here for a simple pickup. He won't waste time with detailed scans of every ship in dock. As far as he knows, we're cooperating fully." Rodriguez considered this for a moment, then nodded sharply. "Load them into Cargo Bay 3. It's already prepped for sensitive materials transport. The environmental controls are independent and the sensor baffles will hide their biosignatures." They moved quickly, transferring the younglings to the specially shielded cargo bay. The space was cramped, but functional, with its own life support and temperature control. Sarah helped secure each pod, whispering reassurances in the Valkyrie language. "I'll stay with them," Sarah said as they finished the setup. "No," Rodriguez replied firmly. "You need to be visible on the station when Crenshaw arrives. If you disappear now, they'll know something's wrong. Webb can handle the deception." Sarah's stomach twisted. The plan had always called for her to leave with the younglings, but Rodriguez was right. If she vanished before the Admiral's arrival, it would trigger immediate suspicions. "Sarah," Webb said gently, "she's right. You need to be in your lab when they come looking. Play the grieving scientist who's devastated about losing her research subjects." "But the younglings will be safe with Captain Rodriguez," Webb assured her. "She's risked everything to help them. She won't let them down." Through the transparent aluminum of the nearest pod, Echo pressed its small hand against the barrier. Its compound eyes seemed to focus on Sarah with unmistakable intelligence. It began to sing, not the frightened calls of the past weeks, but something new, something that sounded almost like gratitude. The other younglings joined in, their harmonics weaving together into a complex melody. Sarah recognized fragments of traditional Valkyrie songs, farewell blessings, protection prayers, and underneath it all, a promise of remembrance. "They understand," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "They know what we're doing." The ship's intercom crackled to life. "Captain, we've got incoming traffic. 3 hegemony cruisers requesting immediate docking clearance." Rodriguez activated her comm unit. "Dr. Chen, you need to go. Now." Sarah knelt beside Echo's pod one final time. Speaking in the complex harmony of the Valkyrie language, she said, "Fly far, little hunter. Grow strong. Remember your people's songs. Someday you'll sing them for your own children." Echo's response was a melody so beautiful and sad that it brought fresh tears to everyone present. It was a song Sarah had never heard before, young voices creating something entirely new, a harmony born of loss but reaching toward hope. She turned and ran. The journey back through the maintenance corridors felt like a nightmare. Every step took her further from the younglings she had sworn to protect. But she forced herself to think rationally. This was the only way. If she could convince Crenshaw that she had been as surprised as anyone by the mysterious disappearance of the specimens, the investigation might focus on external threats rather than internal betrayal. She reached her lab just as the station-wide comm system announced the arrival of Admiral Crenshaw's task force. Moving quickly, she activated her personal workstation and brought up her research files on Valkyrie physiology. To anyone checking, it would appear she had been working through the night. 15 minutes later, her door chimed. She opened it to find Admiral Crenshaw himself standing in the corridor, flanked by 2 Marines in full combat armor. The Admiral was exactly what she had expected, tall, lean, with the kind of cold eyes that had authorized the deaths of billions. "Dr. Chen," he said without preamble, "I'm here for the Valkyrie specimens." "Admiral," Sarah replied, injecting just the right amount of nervous confusion into her voice. "I wasn't expecting you for another 2 hours. The specimens are in the medical bay, undergoing their final stabilization treatment before transport." Crenshaw studied her face with predatory intensity. "Show me." The walk to the medical bay felt endless. Sarah prayed that Webb had managed to set up convincing evidence of the incident they had planned. As they entered the lab, she saw immediately that he had outdone himself. The 5 containment pods were present but empty, their life support systems showing cascading failure alerts. Scorch marks on the walls suggested some kind of explosion. Emergency foam covered half the floor. "What happened here?" Crenshaw demanded, his voice deadly quiet. Webb appeared from behind a damaged console, his lab coat stained with synthetic blood and his expression one of professional devastation. "Admiral, thank God you're here. We've had a catastrophic system failure. The younglings were in critical condition, and when the life support matrix overloaded," he gestured helplessly at the empty pods. "They're dead?" Crenshaw's voice could have frozen helium. "We're not certain," Sarah interjected, playing her part. "The biomat processors completely vaporized the organic matter. We're running molecular scans of the residue, but with their unique physiology." Crenshaw studied the scene with the eye of someone who had seen 1,000 deceptions. Sarah held her breath, waiting for him to call for a full investigation, to order the station sealed and searched. Instead, he turned to one of his Marines. "Get me a full report from station security. I want to know about every ship movement, every personnel transfer, every maintenance activity in the past 72 hours. "Yes, sir," the Marine replied, already activating his comm unit. As the investigation began, Sarah felt a terrible weight settle on her shoulders. The Perseverance was still docked. Even with the sensor baffles, a detailed military scan might detect the younglings. All they could do now was wait and pray. Deep in Cargo Bay 3, 5 young Valkyrie continued their soft harmonics, their songs carrying hope through the darkness of space. 6 months later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of Haven Colony, watching 5 young Valkyrie play in the crystalline gardens that had been built specially for them. The colony existed in the shadow of a dying star, far beyond the reach of hegemony authority. Here, among refugees from a dozen worlds, the younglings had found something resembling peace. Echo had grown significantly in the months since their escape. The soft, translucent shell of its youth had hardened into the beautiful prismatic carapace of an adolescent Valkyrie. Its compound eyes held an intelligence that reminded Sarah daily of what humanity had lost when they destroyed Tertius Prime. "They're adapting well," said Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the colony's chief xenobiologist. She was one of dozens of human scientists who had fled hegemony space, unwilling to continue research that served only military conquest. "Their emotional development has been remarkable, considering the trauma they've endured." Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on the younglings themselves. They had arranged themselves in their traditional pentagonal formation, their harmonics weaving together as they practiced the ancient songs Sarah had taught them. But increasingly they were creating new melodies, hybrid compositions that blended Valkyrie tradition with influences from their new home. "They're not just preserving their culture," Sarah observed. "They're evolving it." The investigation following their disappearance had lasted 3 weeks. Admiral Crenshaw had been thorough, but Webb's fabricated evidence had held up under scrutiny. The official report concluded that a cascade failure in the life support systems had resulted in the complete molecular destruction of the specimens. Sarah had been reprimanded for inadequate safety protocols, but otherwise cleared of wrongdoing. She had waited another month before requesting transfer to a deep space research station. The paperwork had been approved without question. The hegemony was always eager to assign blame for failures to individual incompetence rather than systemic problems. From there, it had been relatively simple to disappear during a routine supply run. Captain Rodriguez had kept her word. The Perseverance had carried the younglings safely through 7 hyperspace jumps to reach Haven Colony. The journey had taken 2 weeks, with Sarah maintaining constant communication through encrypted subspace channels to monitor the children's health and emotional state. The reunion had been overwhelming. The younglings had grown stronger during the journey, their harmonics more complex and confident. When Sarah finally emerged from the ship's airlock on Haven, their song of greeting had brought tears to the eyes of every human present. "Sarah?" Echo called to her now in its crystalline voice, using the human name it had learned to pronounce in its own unique way. The other younglings, whom the colonists had named Harmony, Resonance, Cadence, and Symphony, gathered around as she approached their play area. "We have been practicing the old songs," Echo continued in the flowing language of its people. "But we have also been creating new ones. Would you like to hear?" Sarah sat cross-legged in the synthetic grass, a position the younglings had learned to associate with story time. "I would be honored." The 5 arranged themselves in their traditional formation, but this time their song was unlike anything Sarah had ever heard. It began with fragments of ancient Valkyrie melodies, lullabies, hunting songs, and the great cycle songs that told the history of their people. But woven throughout were new elements: the rhythm of the colony's life support systems, the harmonic frequencies of human speech, even musical interpretations of the colors in Haven's artificial sunsets. It was a song of loss and hope, of endings and beginnings. It spoke of fire and destruction, of brave humans who risked everything to save 5 young lives, of long journeys through the dark between stars. But most powerfully, it spoke of the future, of younglings who would grow into adults, of children who would be born on new worlds, of a culture that would survive and flourish in forms their ancestors never could have imagined. When the song ended, Sarah realized she was crying. Around the observation deck, colonists had gathered to listen. Humans, yes, but also Cathara refugees with their feathered wings, the silicon-based Methodists from the vegan systems, and representatives from 6 other species that had found sanctuary on Haven. "It's beautiful," Sarah whispered. "It is our gift," Echo replied solemnly. "The old songs preserved our past. These new songs will carry our future. Dr. Tanaka appeared beside them, carrying a data pad with obvious excitement. Sarah, you need to see this. We've been analyzing the youngling's neural development patterns, and the results are extraordinary. Sarah accepted the pad, scanning the complex charts and graphs. Her xenobiology training helped her understand the implications immediately. Their cognitive development is accelerating? Beyond anything we've seen in pre-contact recordings of Valkyrie youth, Tanaka confirmed. It's as if the trauma of loss has triggered some kind of evolutionary adaptation. They're not just growing faster, they're growing differently. More complex neural pathways, enhanced pattern recognition, expanded harmonic processing centers. Sarah looked back at the younglings, who had resumed their play but were clearly listening to the adult conversation. They understand, she realized. They know they're changing. Echo approached them, its movements showing the fluid grace that would mark its transition to full adulthood. Dr. Sarah, we have been meaning to speak with you about this. We feel the changes within ourselves. Our songs grow more complex each day. Our understanding expands like ripples in still water. Are you frightened? Sarah asked gently. No, Echo replied after considering the question carefully. We are excited. The old Valkyrie lived in one harmony for 10,000 cycles. We 5 will create new harmonies for the ages to come. Symphony, the smallest of the group, added her own melodic voice. We have been studying the databases of all the species here on Haven. We want to learn their songs too. Imagine what music we could make when we understand the voices of the universe. Sarah felt a chill of wonder run down her spine. These weren't just survivors, they were something new. The trauma that had destroyed their world had also freed them from the limitations of their species' traditional development. They were becoming something unprecedented, Valkyrie enhanced by loss, strengthened by adaptation, unlimited by the boundaries their ancestors had accepted. There's more, Tanaka continued, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. The analysis suggests they'll reach full cognitive maturity within 2 years instead of the normal 20, and their potential lifespan... Sarah, if our projections are correct, they could live for thousands of years. Sarah stared at the 5 younglings with new understanding. They weren't just the last of their kind, they were the first of something entirely new. The hegemony had thought they were destroying the Valkyrie when they burned Tertius Prime. Instead, they had inadvertently created something far more powerful. They'll need teachers, Sarah said finally, not just for Valkyrie culture, but for everything. Science, art, philosophy, the histories of 100 worlds. They'll need protectors too, Tanaka added quietly. If the hegemony ever discovers what they're becoming... Sarah nodded grimly. The hegemony feared evolved species above all else. They had spent centuries suppressing any development that might threaten human dominance. If they learned that the destroyed Valkyrie specimens had not only survived, but transformed into something potentially superior to baseline humanity. Then we make sure they never find out, Sarah said firmly. Haven Colony maintains strict communication protocols with the outside galaxy. As far as the hegemony knows, the Valkyrie are extinct. Echo had been listening to their conversation with the patient attention that characterized its species. Now it spoke, its harmonics carrying undertones of adult wisdom that shouldn't have been possible in one so young. Dr. Sarah, we understand the danger we represent to your people's empire. But we also understand something else. We are not the end of our species. We are the beginning of something new, something that will span the stars and unite the songs of every living world. It gestured to its 4 companions, who had arranged themselves in a new pattern, not the traditional pentagon of Valkyrie youth, but something more complex, more dynamic. We 5 will grow, and we will remember everything. The songs of our lost world, yes, but also the courage of humans who risked everything to save us. the hospitality of colonies that shelter the displaced, the hopes of species that dream of freedom from empire. Their combined harmonics rose in a crescendo that seemed to resonate through the very structure of the observation deck. It was a promise and a prophecy, a song of vengeance transformed into something greater. "Someday, we will return to the galaxy," Echo continued, "not as refugees or specimens, but as teachers and healers and weavers of new harmonies. We will carry the light of 10,000 worlds, and no empire will be strong enough to extinguish it." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she understood the full magnitude of what she had saved. Not just 5 young lives, but the future itself. The hegemony had sown the seeds of its own transformation when they tried to destroy the Valkyrie. These 5 would grow, would learn, would become bridges between species that had never imagined cooperation was possible. In the distance, Haven's artificial sun was setting, painting the sky in colors no natural world had ever seen. The younglings began their evening song, a new composition that incorporated elements from every species on the colony. It was a sound of pure hope, rising toward the stars like a promise that tomorrow would be different. Sarah closed her eyes and listened, knowing that she had witnessed the moment when the galaxy began to change forever. The flames had indeed devoured the nest, but from those ashes, 5 young hunters had emerged carrying something infinitely more precious than their own lives. They carried the future.